This is 9-6, factoring trinomials of the type ax squared plus bx plus c. In 9-5, we factored trinomials of the type x squared plus bx plus c. So the only difference here is that now we have this coefficient in front of our x squared term. First I want to look at, again, we're going backwards, which is the same thing we did in 9-5. We're going backwards from having our trinomial and factoring it into two binomials. So first I want to look at how we FOIL out binomials. Since this is what our answers for this lesson are going to look like. They're going to look like binomials like this. So if we FOILed out this binomial, FOIL again is first, outer, inner, last. We would do first times the first, 2x times 5x, 10x squared. Then outer, outside, 2x times 4. 2x times 4 is 8x. Then inner, 3 times 5x, 15x. And finally, last, 3 times 4, which is 12. And so you see here where we get all of our terms using FOIL. And then what do we always do with the O and the I? We always end up combining like terms, 8x plus 5x. And so we always end up adding O plus I. So if you'll see here with our result, our trinomial, we have our first term. Our outer plus our inner gives us our middle term. And then our last term is 12. So we're going to use this principle to factor this trinomial 20x squared plus 7x plus 3. We're going to use FOIL to help us factor this trinomial. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write out my terms and I'm going to spread them out a little bit. So I have 20x squared plus 17x plus 3. Everything's positive. That's great. We love when everything's positive. We know it's going to make our lives a lot easier. So if we look back at what we just did, we can see that to get our first term, we had to multiply first times the first. So all we did was 2 times 5, which gave us the 10, and x times x obviously gave us the x squared. So in order to get this 20x squared, we're going to need to find all the factors of 20. For instance, 2 and 5 are factors of 10. So we need to find all the factors of 20 to get 20x squared. So we're going to find the factors of 20 to get our first term. Our middle term, which we just looked at, to get our middle term, we know we always add O and I together. Our middle term is always O plus I. And then our last term, obviously, we have the factors of the last term. So that's what we're going to do here. I'm going to have my first term, and then this will be my O plus I, and then my last term. So I'm going to find all the factors of my first term and all the factors of my last term, and I'm going to put those together in the middle to get my middle term. So first we'll start with the factors of my first term. My first would be 1 times 20. So I'm going to start with 1 times 20, and I'm going to work with that with my factors of 3, which my first factor of 3 would be 1 times 3. 1 times 3 would give me 3. Okay, now I'm going to use this and combine these two together to come up with my middle term. So remember that O stands for outer and I stands for inner. So I'm going to do my outer. 1 is on the outside and 3 is on the outside. So I do 1 times 3 plus, then I'll do the inner. 20 is on the inside and 1 is on the inside. So we do 20 times 1. Then we need to see if this result adds up to give us 17. So let's add it together. 1 times 3 is 3. 20 times 1 is 20. 20 plus 3 is 23. That doesn't work. So now we need to try something else. So how about instead of 1 times 3, what if I flip it around and we try 3 times 1? Okay, so again I'm using 1 and 20, but now I'm using 3 and 1. So 1 is still on the outside here, so I have 1 times, now 1 is on the outside here, 1 times 1, plus then the inside, 20 still on the inside here, times, now the inside here is 3, 20 times 3. And let's see what result we get there. 1 times 1 is 1. 20 times 3 is 60. 60 plus 1 is 61. Ooh, that's way too high. So those numbers don't work. Well, we've exhausted our factors of 3, but we haven't exhausted the factors of 20. So let's try another 2 factors of 20. After 1 times 20, I would have 2 times 10. Now I'm going to try 2 times 10 with, again, 1 times 3 and also with 3 times 1, just like we just did. So I'll start with outer, and again, this is my inner column, so outer and inner. So outer, 2 and 3 are on the outside, so I have 2 times 3, plus on the inside I have 10 and 1, 10 times 1. 2 times 3 is 6. 10 times 1 is 10. 10 plus 6 is 16. Okay, that's kind of close, but it's still not the magic number we need of 17. So let's try our other one. 2 is still on the outside. 2 times, now 1's on the outside. 2 times 1 plus inner 10 times, now 3 is on the inside. 3. 2 times 1 is 2. 10 times 3 is 30. 30 plus 2 is 32. Still not the number we need. Okay, so we've now exhausted our factors of 3 again with our factors of 22 and 10. So since 2 and 10 didn't work, let's try another pair of factors for 20. Next, I would have 3 doesn't factor into 20, so next would be 4 times 5. So now I use 4 times 5 with 1 times 3 and 3 times 1 to see if I can come up with 17. Again, that's our goal. We want to figure out what four numbers actually we're going to be using to come up with our middle term of 17x. So again, I have my outer first. This is all my outer column. This is all my inner column. Actually, I'll go ahead and make that red. Outer. So I have 4 is on the outside and also 3 is on the outside. 4 times 3 is 12 times, sorry, I did that too quick, didn't I? Okay, let me try that again. We're just writing 4 times 3 plus, and then on the inside I have 5 and 1, so 5 times 1, which gives me 4 times 3 is 12, 5 times 1 is 5, 12 plus 5 is 17. There we are. Finally, we have found our numbers we're going to use to end up with the middle term of 17. So now we can go ahead and write our binomials. Remember, our whole goal is to take this trinomial and factor it into 2 binomials. Okay, so now that we have a coefficient in front of our x squared, we also have to have a coefficient in front of our x here and in front of our x here. So in 9-5, we just put x, and then we filled in our numbers. But now, since we have a coefficient in front of our x squared term, now we have coefficients in front of our first terms in both our binomials. So in order to figure out where these go, since we're using 4 times 3 and 5 times 1, basically, since 4 and 3 are on the outside, 4 goes here and 3 goes here, so that they're on the outside. They're the outer, the 2 outer terms that we found, so they're on the outside. And I just put them in order, so I had 4 and 3 on the outside. But also, we know that 4 has to be first since it came from the first column. 4 was in our first column, so it has to be in first position, and it also has to be outside. So it has to satisfy both. It's in the first position, and it's on the outside. So this is first position and outside, and that's the only place it could be in the first position and outside. Here would be first position, but inside, so it wouldn't work there. And then 3 was on the outer column, and 3 was also, in this case, we chose this pair of 1 times 3, and so it was also in last position. So here's outer and last. Now we need to place 5 and 1. So 5 was an inner number, and it's also in first position. So if we put it here, it would be on the inside, and it's also in first position. And then finally 1. Now since all our numbers are positive, we know we're just going to put plus and plus there. So here's our answer. That is our factored trinomial. But if you want to check to make sure that your answer is correct, all you need to do is FOIL. So let's quickly FOIL. 4x times 5x, 20x squared. 4x times 3 plus 12x. 1 times 5 plus 5x. And finally 1 times 3 plus 3. Combine like terms. 20x squared plus 17x plus 3. So you see we do end up with what we started with, and this is in fact our answer. Now I know that was a lot to swallow, so let's try one more just like it. Now we're going to factor, so this is from Quick Check 1, 6n squared minus 23n plus 7. So we're still doing the same thing. We're going to have, first I'm going to rewrite it and I'm going to spread it out. 6n squared minus 23n and plus 7. We know this is our first column. Then I'm going to have my, the outer plus my inner, and then my last column. Okay, so first I'm going to come up with my first factor of 6, which would be 1 times 6. Then I'm going to come up with my factors of 7. My first factor of 7 would be 1 times 7. But in this case, since we have a negative 23 here, we know that to get a negative 23, we're going to have some negative numbers in here. So instead of using positive 1 and positive 7, I'm going to use negative 1 and negative 7. Negative 1 times negative 7 is still positive 7, but that way we'll end up with a negative number in the middle. Let's see how that works out. So I have my first term times, I'm doing the outer column now, so I have outside and outside. So I have 1 times negative 7 plus, then I'll do inner and inner. So I have 6 times negative 1. And then remember, you just need to work this out and see if you can get negative 23. So I have 1 times negative 7, that's negative 7. 6 times negative 1, negative 6 plus negative 7, negative 13, and that doesn't work. So let's try another 2 factors. So now we'll try negative 7 times negative 1. So we're just reversing the order here so we get a different order in the middle. 1 is still on the outside times now negative 1's on the outside plus 6 is on the inside still times now negative 7 is on the inside, and let's try that. 1 times negative 1 is negative 1. 6 times negative 7 is negative 42 plus negative 1, negative 43. That also didn't do it for us. So now let's try another 2 factors of 6, because we've already exhausted 1 times 6 with all our factors of 7. So now we'll try, let's see, 2 times 3, and we'll start with negative 1 times negative 7, and then we'll also try it with negative 7 times negative 1. So I have outer times outer, 2 times negative, try that again. We don't need 2 multiplication signs. 2 times negative 7 plus, and then the inside, 3 and negative 1. 3 times negative 1. 2 times negative 7, that's negative 14. 3 times negative 1, negative 3, negative 17. Okay, that's kind of close, but still not it. So let's try now reversing negative 1 and negative 7. So we'll do negative 7 times negative 1 now, still using 2 and 3. So 2 is still on the outside times now negative 1's on the outside plus the inside, 3 is still on the inside, times negative 7's on the inside now. 2 times negative 1, negative 2. 3 times negative 7, negative 21. Negative 21 plus negative 2 is, in fact, negative 23. So now we've found our terms to use. We're going to use 2, negative 1, 3, negative 7, because they end up with giving us a negative 23. So now let's write our binomials. So since 2 is outer and also first, it has to go here, 2 in, and negative 1 has to be on the outside, and it's also from our last column, so here it is, last. So if you'll notice, the outside ones, 2 and negative 1, I really just put them in order. Then our inside terms are 3 and negative 7, so 3 has to be first, so here, 3 in, and negative 7 has to be, negative 7 also has to be inside and last, so here it is, negative 7 inside and last. So let me push those together. They look kind of weird, so it would be something more like this, 2n minus 7 times 3n minus 1, and remember to check, all you do is FOIL. We'll do that real quick just to see again that it really does work. 2n times 3n, 6n squared, 2n times negative 1, negative 2n, negative 7 times 3n, negative 21n, and negative 7 times negative 1, positive 7. Combine like terms, 6n squared minus 23n plus 7. So again, if we just look over this one more time, remember that since our middle term was a negative 23n, we had to have the factors of our last term had to be negative so that we could end up with a negative 23n in the middle. All right, that does it for example 1. We'll continue in the next video with the rest of our examples.